The emergency beacons screamed across 17 solar systems before anyone bothered to listen. On the dying world of Kepler 442b, the Zephyrians huddled in their underground shelters, watching their last defensive positions crumble under the relentless assault of the Void Hunters. Ambassador Zektar pressed his four-fingered hand against the transmitter one final time, his bioluminescent patches flickering weakly in the dim light of the command bunker. "This is the Zephyrian Republic broadcasting on all emergency frequencies." His voice cracked through the static. "We are under siege by unknown hostile forces. Our military has fallen. Our colonies are burning. If there is anyone out there who believes in justice, who stands against the darkness that consumes worlds, please, we beg of you, help us." The message repeated for 3 standard days, before reaching Earth's deep space monitoring station on Luna. Lieutenant Sarah Chen almost dismissed it as another hoax, until the linguistic analysis confirmed it was genuine alien communication. Within 6 hours, the transmission sat on the desk of General Marcus Rodriguez at the Pentagon. "Sir, we've verified the authenticity through 17 different protocols," Chen explained, her tablet displaying the translation matrix. "The distress call originates from a star system roughly 47 light-years from Earth. Our deep space telescopes confirm massive energy signatures consistent with orbital bombardment." Rodriguez studied the data, his weathered face creased with concentration. 30 years of military service had taught him to recognize desperation, and this alien message reeked of it. "What do we know about these Zephyrians?" "First contact protocols suggest they're a peaceful species. Carbon-based, roughly humanoid, with advanced biotechnology but limited military capabilities. Intelligence estimates suggest their population across 12 worlds is approximately 2 billion individuals." "And these Void Hunters?" "Unknown, sir. The electromagnetic interference makes detailed scans impossible, but preliminary data suggests they're using some form of energy-draining technology. Every planet they've attacked has gone completely dark within 72 hours. The general leaned back in his chair, the weight of the decision pressing down on him like a physical force. Earth had only recently achieved faster-than-light travel, and their first contact protocols were designed for peaceful meetings, not rescue operations across interstellar distances. "Get me Admiral Patricia Walsh and Colonel James Harrison," he ordered. "If we're going to do this, we need our best." 3 hours later, the war room buzzed with activity as Earth's finest military minds gathered around a holographic display showing the Kepler 442 system. Admiral Walsh, her silver hair pulled back in a regulation bun, studied the tactical data, while Colonel Harrison analyzed the ground situation reports still trickling in from Zephyrian survivors. "The logistics alone are staggering," Walsh muttered, highlighting the distance measurements. "Even with our newest FTL drives, we're looking at a minimum transit time of 6 days. By then, there might not be anyone left to save," Harrison finished grimly. "But look at this intelligence data. These Void Hunters, they're methodical. They don't just destroy planets, they harvest something from them first. That gives us a window." Dr. Elizabeth Kane, Earth's leading xenobiologist, looked up from her analysis station. "The Zephyrian biological signatures suggest they're remarkably similar to Earth mammals in terms of basic physiology. Whatever the Void Hunters are doing to them, it's likely they could do to us too." The implications hung heavy in the air. This wasn't just about helping aliens in distress, this was potentially about Earth's own survival. "What assets do we have available for immediate deployment?" Rodriguez asked, his decision already made. "The UES Endeavour just completed her shakedown cruise," Walsh replied. "She's our newest Tangent-class battlecruiser, equipped with the latest plasma weaponry and kinetic bombardment systems. We also have the 15th Marine Expeditionary Unit aboard the UES Valkyrie, and the 3rd Special Operations Group is on standby." End quote. Harrison pulled up personnel files on his tablet. "For ground operations, I recommend deploying the 2nd Battalion, 5th Marines under Lieutenant Colonel Maria Santos. They've cross-trained extensively in zero-gravity and hostile environment combat. If we're going into an unknown battlefield against an unknown enemy, they're our best shot." Rodriguez nodded slowly. "How quickly can we deploy?" "With emergency protocols, 18 hours for full combat readiness," Walsh confirmed. "Make it 12, Every hour we delay is another 1,000 alien lives lost. Across the base, alarms began sounding as Earth's military machine lurched into motion. In the Marine barracks, Gunnery Sergeant David Chen, no relation to the Luna Station officer, was briefing his squad when the emergency klaxon echoed through the corridors. "Listen up, Marines." Chen's voice cut through the noise as soldiers rushed to their gear lockers. "We've got a situation. Aliens under attack, 47 light-years from home, and we're the cavalry." I know what you're thinking, this sounds like a bad science fiction movie. But this is real. This is happening. And Earth Command has decided we're the ones to handle it. Private First Class Tommy Rodriguez, the general's nephew, though nobody was supposed to know that, felt his stomach drop. "Sarge, are we talking about actual aliens? Like little green men aliens?" "Negative, Rodriguez. According to the briefing packet, they're called Zephyrians. Roughly human-sized, peaceful, and currently getting their asses kicked by something called Void Hunters. Our job is to even the odds." Corporal Lisa Park, the squad's demolitions expert, was already checking her equipment. "What's our rules of engagement, Gunny?" "Simple. The Zephyrians are friendlies. Anyone shooting at them gets a bullet. Anyone shooting at us gets 2 bullets. Any questions?" The squad exchanged glances. They'd trained for urban warfare, desert combat, jungle operations, and even zero-gravity boarding actions. But none of them had ever imagined their first real combat deployment would be fighting aliens on a distant world to save other aliens they'd never met. "Gunny." Private Jennifer Walsh, the Admiral's daughter, another family connection nobody talked about, raised her hand nervously. "What if these Void Hunters have technology we can't handle? What if our weapons don't work on them?" Chen's expression grew serious. "Then we improvise, adapt, and overcome. It's what Marines do. We've been the toughest sons of bitches on Earth for over 200 years. Time to see if we're the toughest sons of bitches in the galaxy." The loading bays of the UES Valkyrie transformed into controlled chaos as Marines, equipment, and supplies were rapidly transferred aboard. Lieutenant Colonel Santos moved through the organized mayhem, checking on her Marines and coordinating with the ship's crew. Colonel Major Frank Thompson, her executive officer, jogged over with a tablet full of updates. "Engineering reports all combat systems are green. We've loaded enough ammunition for a sustained ground campaign. Plus emergency medical supplies adapted for potential alien physiology." "Good. What about intelligence updates?" "Still receiving scattered transmissions from Zephyrian survivors. The situation is deteriorating rapidly. But it looks like they're maintaining defensive positions in several major population centers. If we can link up with their forces, we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. Right now, focus on getting the Marines ready for anything." Captain Michael Kim, leading the 3rd Platoon, was conducting last-minute equipment checks when his communication system crackled to life. "All hands, this is Admiral Walsh. In approximately 10 hours, we will transition to FTL and begin our journey to the Kepler 442 system. This will be humanity's first military action beyond our solar system, and our first contact with both friendly and hostile alien species. I won't lie to you, we don't know what we're walking into, but I do know this. Earth's Marines have never backed down from a fight, and we're not starting now. We're going to save those aliens. We're going to kick the ass of whoever's trying to exterminate them, and we're going to show the galaxy that humanity stands with the innocent against those who prey on the weak. Prepare for FTL transition in T-6 hours." As the countdown continued, the Marines settled into their bunks and began the mental preparation that every soldier knows before heading into combat. Some wrote letters home, others checked and rechecked their equipment. A few gathered around Chaplain Lieutenant Marcus Washington for a brief prayer service. "Lord, we're about to do something that no human being has ever done before." Washington's voice was steady and calm. "We're going to fight for people we've never met, on a world we've never seen, against an enemy we don't understand. Give us the courage to do what's right, the wisdom to make good decisions under fire, and the strength to bring our people home safely. And if it's your will, help us save the Zephyrians from whatever evil threatens them." In the officers' wardroom, Santos gathered her key personnel for final mission briefing. The holographic display showed what little they knew about Kepler 442b, a world slightly larger than Earth, with higher gravity but breathable atmosphere. According to the Zephyrian transmissions, their cities are primarily underground to protect against radiation from their binary star system, she explained. That means urban combat in confined spaces against an unknown enemy. Not exactly ideal conditions. Ma'am, Captain Kim spoke up. What's our primary objective? Search and rescue? Or combat operations? Both. We link up with Zephyrian survivors, assess the threat level of these void hunters, and eliminate them if possible. If they're too strong for a direct assault, we evacuate as many civilians as we can and gather intelligence for a larger response. Gunnery Sergeant Chen studied the tactical data. Colonel, with respect, this feels like we're walking into a meat grinder with a blindfold on. Santos nodded grimly. You're not wrong, Gunny. But sometimes, Marines have to walk into the meat grinder because nobody else will. Besides, we've got some advantages these void hunters won't be expecting. Such as? They've been fighting Zephyrians for weeks, peaceful aliens with limited military experience. They have no idea what human Marines are capable of when we're pissed off and protecting innocents. The FTL transition happened exactly on schedule. One moment, the task force was orbiting Luna. And the next, they were hurtling through hyperspace toward a distant star system where an alien race fought for its survival against forces that consumed entire worlds. During the 6-day journey, the Marines trained relentlessly. They practiced urban combat scenarios, studied what little was known about Zephyrian physiology in case they needed to provide medical aid, and rehearsed first contact protocols. Most importantly, they prepared mentally for the reality that they might be the only thing standing between an innocent species and complete extinction. On the 5th day, they received a final transmission from the Zephyrian homeworld. Ambassador Zektar's voice was barely a whisper, his words broken by static and the sounds of distant explosions. To anyone who might be listening, the capital has fallen. Millions are dead or missing. The void hunters continue their harvest. We estimate 36 hours before our last defensive positions are overrun. If help is coming, please hurry. We don't want to die forgotten in the darkness. The message ended with a child's voice, speaking in the musical language of the Zephyrians. Dr. Kane translated it for the Marines. Mama says the lights in the sky will help us. I hope she's right. I hope she's right. In the squad bay, the Marines listened to that translation in complete silence. Then Private Rodriguez stood up, his young face hard with determination. Gunny, I don't care if these void hunters are 10 feet tall and shoot laser beams from their eyes. No way in hell are we letting that kid down. Chen looked around at his Marines and saw the same expression on every face. These aliens they'd never met weren't just a mission anymore. They were people who needed help, and Marines didn't let people down. Listen up. Chen's voice carried throughout the squad bay. Tomorrow morning, we drop into hell to pull some aliens out of the fire. These void hunters think they can just roll over peaceful species and take whatever they want. Time to teach them what happens when they mess with someone under the protection of Earth's Marines. The cheers that followed echoed through the ship, and Admiral Walsh, monitoring from the bridge, allowed herself a small smile. Whatever they were about to face in the Kepler 442 system, the void hunters were in for the fight of their lives. As the task force prepared to drop out of hyperspace, every Marine aboard the UES Valkyrie was ready for battle. They didn't know what they would find when they arrived, but they knew one thing with absolute certainty. The cavalry was coming, and hell was coming with them. The UES Valkyrie dropped out of hyperspace into chaos. The Kepler 442 system's primary star cast an orange glow across a battlefield that stretched from the outer planets to the homeworld itself. Massive dark shapes moved between the moons like predatory whales, their hulls absorbing light rather than reflecting it. These were the Void Hunters, and they were even more terrifying than Earth's intelligence had predicted. Jesus Christ, whispered Lieutenant Sarah Manning from the bridge's tactical station. Admiral, I'm reading 17 hostile vessels, each one approximately 3 kilometers in length. They're They're actually draining energy from the star itself. Admiral Walsh studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. The Void Hunter ships weren't just weapons of war, they were cosmic vampires, feeding on stellar energy and using it to power weapons that could crack planets. 3 Zephyrian worlds had already gone dark, their surfaces scarred by orbital bombardment that left nothing but lifeless rock. "Get me Lieutenant Colonel Santos on the comm," Walsh ordered. "The situation down there is worse than we anticipated." On the planet's surface, the Zephyrian capital city of Lumthara was a maze of collapsed tunnels and emergency shelters. Ambassador Zektar crouched in what had once been the council chamber, now serving as a refugee center for the few hundred survivors still alive in the government district. His bioluminescent patches flickered weakly, a sign of the extreme stress his species experienced during life-threatening situations. "They come in waves," he explained to his aide. Velana. As they listened to the distant rumble of Void Hunter ground forces moving through the upper tunnels. "First, the skyships drain the power from our cities. Then the harvesters arrive to collect what they need from our people." Velana shuddered, her young features marked by days of terror. "What do they take from us?" Zektar's silence was more frightening than any answer could have been. He had seen the harvester facilities on the outer worlds before the communications went dark. The Void Hunters weren't just killing Zephyrians, they were processing them, extracting something essential from their life force to fuel their own dark technology. "Ambassador," a young engineer named Keth Moore burst into the chamber, his breathing rapid with excitement rather than fear for the first time in weeks. "The long-range sensors are detecting something new. Ships are approaching the system, not Void Hunter vessels. They're smaller, moving faster, and their energy signatures are completely different." Hope flickered in Zektar's large eyes. "The distress call. Someone actually received our distress call." Aboard the UES Valkyrie, Lieutenant Colonel Santos was already suiting up for combat when the communication came through from Admiral Walsh. "Santos, we've made contact with Zephyrian survivors on the surface. The capital city is still partially intact, but they estimate less than 48 hours before the Void Hunters complete their harvest operation. I'm deploying your Marines immediately." "Understood, Admiral." "What's our LZ?" "The Zephyrians are transmitting coordinates for a landing zone approximately 5 kilometers from their main refugee center. Be advised, long-range scans show significant Void Hunter ground presence throughout the area." "These aren't just ships, Colonel. They have infantry." Santos felt a chill run down her spine. Alien infantry meant unknown capabilities, unknown weapons, and unknown tactics. But that's what Marines trained for, fighting the unknown and winning anyway. The dropships launched 20 minutes later, carrying 200 Marines toward the surface of an alien world under siege. Gunnery Sergeant Chen ran final equipment checks as the shuttles descended through the atmosphere, the hull shaking as they hit turbulence. "Listen up," Chen shouted over the noise. "Intelligence update from the surface. The Zephyrians are roughly human-sized but built lighter. Their tech is mostly biological living computers. Organic weapons, that kind of thing. The Void Hunters are the opposite. Pure, mechanical, heavy armor. And they seem to absorb energy from everything around them." Private Rodriguez checked his rifle for the 3rd time. "What's that mean for our weapons, Gunny?" "It means we're about to find out if good old-fashioned kinetic energy can punch through alien armor. If bullets don't work, we improvise." Marines have been solving impossible problems for centuries. The first dropship touched down in a clearing surrounded by the twisted remains of what had once been a Zephyrian garden district. The organic architecture was unlike anything humans had ever seen, buildings that had grown rather than been constructed, their flowing lines now broken and scarred by energy weapons. Captain Kim led his platoon out of the shuttle, immediately taking defensive positions as they scanned the area. The silence was unnerving. No bird songs, no insect sounds, nothing that indicated life. Even the air felt wrong, thinner than Earth normal, with a metallic taste that suggested heavy atmospheric contamination. "Movement, 2 o'clock, whispered Corporal Park, her rifle trained on a pile of rubble 50 meters away. Something big. The rubble shifted, and a figure emerged that made every Marine's heart skip a beat. It was humanoid, but clearly alien, tall and graceful, with pale blue skin marked by fading bioluminescent patches. This was their first look at a Zephyrian, and despite the obvious signs of exhaustion and trauma, the being moved with inherent dignity. "Hold fire," Kim commanded as his Marines tensed. "Friendly contact." The Zephyrian approached slowly, hands visible and empty. When it spoke, the words came through a small translation device, clipped to what appeared to be ceremonial robes, now torn and stained with dust. "I am Velana, of the Science Caste. Are you the ones who answered our call for help?" Kim lowered his rifle and stepped forward. "Captain Michael Kim, United States Marine Corps. Earth. We're here to help." The young alien's bioluminescent patches flickered brighter, apparently a sign of relief or joy. "Earth? You came so far?" Ambassador Zektar said someone might answer. But we had almost given up hope. "Where are the survivors? How many people are we talking about?" "In this sector, perhaps 800 individuals remain in the deep shelters." "But Captain, there are other shelters throughout the city, and the Void Hunters are systematically searching each one. When they find survivors." She didn't finish the sentence, but her meaning was clear. "Can you guide us to the nearest shelter?" Velana nodded quickly. "Yes. But we must move carefully. The harvesters patrol in groups, and their detection equipment can sense life signs through most barriers." As the Marines advanced through the alien cityscape, following their new guide through tunnels that pulsed with faint bioluminescence, they got their first look at the true scale of the devastation. The Void Hunters had been methodical in their destruction. Every power source had been drained. Every weapon had been destroyed, and every defensible position had been systematically eliminated. "This isn't random destruction," observed Captain Kim as they paused at an intersection. "This is targeted elimination of military capacity, followed by harvest operations. These Void Hunters have done this before." Velana confirmed his suspicions. "The outer worlds fell within days. They hit Zefka first, then Mordun, then Veltar. Each time, the pattern was the same. Orbital bombardment, ground assault, then," she gestured helplessly, "the harvest." Kim finished grimly. They were halfway to the refugee center when they encountered their first Void Hunter patrol. The sound came first, a deep, mechanical humming that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. Then came the energy signature that made their equipment readings spike into the red zone. "Contact front," whispered Corporal Park from her position at the tunnel entrance. 3 hostiles, approximately 30 meters out and closing. Kim moved up to observe and felt his blood run cold. The Void Hunters were like nothing in human military experience. Each one stood nearly 3 meters tall, encased in black armor that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They moved with mechanical precision, but there was something organic about their movements, as if the beings inside the armor weren't entirely artificial. "They're scanning," Velana whispered urgently. "If they detect us..." Kim made a decision that would define humanity's first contact with hostile alien forces. Rather than wait to be discovered, he signaled his Marines to prepare for attack. The element of surprise was the only advantage they had. "On my mark," he whispered into his comm. "Concentrated fire on the lead target. 3, 2, 1. Mark." 16 Marine rifles opened fire simultaneously, sending a hail of armor-piercing rounds toward the Void Hunter patrol. The results were immediate and devastating. The lead harvester, as the Zephyrians called the ground forces, staggered under the kinetic impact, its energy shields sparking and failing as bullets found gaps in its armor. But the creature didn't die. Instead, it turned toward the Marine position with what could only be described as interest, raising a weapon that looked like a crystalline growth emerging from its arm. "Scatter!" Kim shouted as an energy beam lanced through the tunnel, instantly vaporizing a section of the organic wall where his Marines had been positioned seconds earlier. The battle that followed lasted only 3 minutes, but it established the tactical parameters that would define the entire campaign. Human weapons could damage Void Hunter armor, but it required concentrated fire to bring down even a single enemy. The Harvester's energy weapons were devastating but slow to recharge, giving Marines a brief window for movement between shots. Most importantly, the Void Hunters had clearly never faced opponents who fought with human aggression and adaptability. They were used to the methodical defensive tactics of peaceful species, not Marines who used explosives to bring down tunnel ceilings and flanking maneuvers to attack from unexpected angles. When the smoke cleared, 3 Void Hunter harvesters lay motionless on the tunnel floor, their dark armor cracked and leaking some kind of fluid that ate into the organic flooring. "Holy shit," breathed Private Rodriguez as he approached one of the fallen enemies. "Did we actually just kill aliens?" "Hostile aliens, who were about to murder innocent civilians," Kim corrected. "And yes, we did." Velana stared at the Marines with something approaching awe. "In 6 weeks of fighting, our military never managed to destroy a single harvester. You eliminated 3 of them in minutes." "Different fighting philosophy," Kim explained as his Marines searched the bodies for intelligence. "Your people are peaceful. We're United States Marines. There's a difference." The revelation that human forces had actually engaged and defeated Void Hunter ground units spread through the Zephyrian refugee network faster than their organic communication systems could carry it. For the first time since the invasion began, there was hope. In the deep shelter beneath the government district, Ambassador Zektar received the news with disbelief that gradually transformed into something he hadn't felt in weeks. Optimism. "They destroyed 3 harvesters?" he asked the messenger, a young scout who had witnessed the battle from a concealed observation post. "Yes, Ambassador. Their weapons use kinetic projectiles rather than energy, so the harvesters' absorption shields were ineffective. And their tactics, they fight like nothing we've ever seen. Aggressive, adaptable, and completely without fear." Zektar activated the emergency communication system, broadcasting on all frequencies still available to Zephyrian forces throughout the city. "This is Ambassador Zektar to all survivors. The help we requested has arrived. Forces from the planet Earth have engaged Void Hunter ground units and achieved victory. Repeat, the humans have defeated Harvester patrols. Maintain your positions and assist human forces when possible. Our liberation may be at hand." The message was intercepted by Void Hunter communication networks, transmitted instantly to the fleet command vessel orbiting the planet's outer moon. For the first time since beginning their harvest operation, the Void Hunters encountered something they had not anticipated: effective resistance. The entity that served as fleet commander was ancient by any measure, having participated in harvest operations across 17 different galaxies. In all that time, across thousands of worlds, they had never encountered a species capable of destroying harvester units in ground combat. The harvest worlds were always peaceful, that was why they were selected for processing. Aggressive species were avoided, as too resource-intensive to subdue. But now, somehow, aggressive defenders had arrived on what should have been a simple harvest world. The fleet commander activated deep scan protocols, analyzing the energy signatures of the new vessels in the system. The readings were confusing. These new ships were primitive by Void Hunter standards, but their crews radiated a form of aggressive life force that was unlike anything in their databases. More troubling was the tactical analysis of the ground engagement. The new defenders, these humans, had used primitive kinetic weapons to devastating effect, suggesting a species that had developed military technology specifically for destroying other living beings. In the Void Hunters' experience, such species were rare and extremely dangerous. The fleet commander made a decision that would escalate the conflict beyond anything the humans had anticipated. If these new defenders could threaten harvest operations, they needed to be eliminated quickly before they could organize effective resistance. Every Void Hunter ground unit on the planet received new orders: locate and destroy the human forces with extreme prejudice. The harvest could continue once this unexpected threat was eliminated. On the surface, the Marines had no idea they had just become the primary target of an entire alien invasion force. They were too busy helping Velana guide them through the underground passages toward the refugee center, where hundreds of Zephyrian civilians waited in desperate hope that salvation had finally arrived. What they found when they reached the shelter would test their resolve and their humanity in ways they had never imagined. The Void Hunters had been conducting harvests for a reason, and the Marines were about to discover exactly what that meant. The refugee center beneath Lumthara was a sight that would haunt every Marine who witnessed it for the rest of their lives. The large chamber, carved from living rock and lined with bioluminescent growth that provided soft blue-green light, housed nearly 600 Zephyrian civilians. Men, women, and children, though their alien features made age difficult to determine, huddled together in family groups, their bioluminescent patches dim with exhaustion and malnutrition. When Captain Kim and his Marines entered the chamber, led by Velana, absolute silence fell over the refugees. 600 pairs of large, dark eyes turned toward the humans with expressions that mixed hope, fear, and desperate curiosity. Ambassador Zektar approached slowly, his ceremonial robes torn and stained but his dignity intact. When he spoke, his translation device carried a voice thick with emotion. "I am Zektar, speaker for the Zephyrian Republic. Are you the ones who answered our call?" Kim stepped forward, removing his helmet so the aliens could see his human face. "Captain Michael Kim, United States Marine Corps. We're here to get you out." The ambassador's bioluminescent patches flickered brighter. "You came so far. We had almost given up hope." "Hope is what Marines do," Kim replied simply. "But we need to understand what we're dealing with. What exactly are these void hunters doing? Why are they called harvesters?" Zektar's patches dimmed again, and he gestured toward a section of the chamber where older Zephyrians sat in meditation poses. "They take our life force, our essence. The void hunters are ancient beings that sustain themselves by draining the spiritual energy of other species. When they harvest a world, they leave behind only empty shells, bodies that breathe, but no longer contain consciousness or soul." The implications hit Kim like a physical blow. These weren't just alien invaders, they were cosmic vampires that fed on the very essence of life itself. "How long do harvested individuals survive?" asked Corporal Park, her medical training kicking in. "Perhaps a day or two," Velana answered quietly. "The body dies when the spirit is completely drained. We found some survivors from the outer colonies before communication ceased. They could not speak, could not think, could barely breathe. It was merciful when they finally stopped." Gunnery Sergeant Chen, who had arrived with the second wave of Marines, listened to this explanation with growing fury. "So these bastards are literally sucking the souls out of innocent people to feed themselves?" "That is an accurate if crude description," Zektar confirmed. Chen turned to his Marines, his face hard as granite. "Well, Marines, looks like we're not just fighting alien invaders. We're fighting goddamn space vampires. Anyone have a problem with that?" The response from his squad was immediate and unanimous. "No, Gunny. Outstanding. Because these soul-sucking pieces of shit just made it personal." Over the next several hours, the Marines established a defensive perimeter around the refugee center, while Lieutenant Colonel Santos coordinated the overall operation from her command post in a secondary tunnel system. The tactical situation was becoming clearer, and it wasn't encouraging. "We've got approximately 1,200 Zephyrian civilians spread across 7 different shelter locations," Santos reported to Admiral Walsh via encrypted communication. "Void Hunter ground forces are conducting systematic searches, moving from shelter to shelter. At their current rate, they'll locate all survivors within 36 hours. "What about evacuation options?" Walsh asked from orbit. "Limited. Our shuttles can't carry more than 40 passengers each, and the Void Hunter air defenses are too heavy for multiple trips. We need to find a way to eliminate their orbital assets or establish a secure evacuation corridor." "Understood. I'm coordinating with General Rodriguez for additional assets, but the earliest reinforcements can arrive is 72 hours. Santos studied the tactical display showing Void Hunter troop movements throughout the city. "Admiral, we can't wait 72 hours. These people will be dead or worse by then. What are you recommending, Colonel?" "We go on the offensive. Take the fight to them before they can complete their harvest operation." The plan that emerged from the next 6 hours of frantic coordination was audacious even by Marine standards. Rather than waiting for the Void Hunters to find each shelter individually, the Marines would lure them into a massive engagement in the city's central plaza, a large open area surrounded by buildings that could provide cover and defensive positions. The bait would be the refugees themselves. "Absolutely not," Zektar protested when Santos presented the plan. You're asking us to use our own people as lures for predators. I'm asking you to trust us, Santos replied firmly. We'll evacuate all the civilians to the central shelter. It's the most defensible position in the city. When the Void Hunters mass their forces for a final assault, we'll be ready for them. Velana, who had quickly become the unofficial liaison between humans and Zephyrians, looked up from the tactical display. Colonel, our analysis suggests the Void Hunters have approximately 2,000 harvester units on the surface. You have 200 Marines. The mathematics are not favorable. Marines don't fight fair, interjected Captain Kim. We fight smart, we fight angry, and we fight to win. 2,000 targets just means we don't have to worry about running out of things to shoot. The evacuation began at dawn, Zephyrian time. Moving through the tunnel networks in groups of 50, the refugees made their way toward the central shelter, while Marine squads provided security and overwatch. The operation went smoothly until the fourth group encountered a Void Hunter patrol that had somehow infiltrated the tunnel system. Private Rodriguez was on point when the first harvester appeared around a bend in the tunnel, its energy weapon already charging. Without hesitation, he threw himself between the alien threat and the group of Zephyrian families behind him, opening fire with his assault rifle while shouting warnings to the civilians. The firefight was brief but vicious. 3 harvesters against 12 Marines and 40 terrified refugees in a confined space. When it ended, 2 Void Hunters were dead, the third was retreating with significant damage, and Rodriguez was down with severe burns from an energy weapon. "Corpseman!" shouted Corporal Park as she applied emergency first aid to the wounded Marine. "Rodriguez, stay with me. You're going to be fine." But Rodriguez wasn't looking at her. He was staring at the group of Zephyrian children who had been directly behind him when the shooting started. All of them were unharmed because he had put his body between them and the enemy. "Did we get them, Corporal?" he whispered. "Yeah, Tommy, we got them. The kids are safe." Rodriguez managed a weak smile before the painkillers took effect. "Good. Marines don't leave people behind." Word of Rodriguez's sacrifice spread quickly through both human and Zephyrian forces. For the aliens, who had lived their entire lives as peaceful beings, the concept of willingly accepting injury to protect strangers was both alien and inspiring. For the Marines, it was just Tuesday, but it reinforced their determination to see the mission through. By the time all refugees had been consolidated in the central shelter, Void Hunter forces throughout the city were converging on their position. Orbital surveillance showed nearly 1,500 harvesters moving through the streets, supported by larger units that the Marines had designated as Reapers, command variants that stood nearly 4 meters tall and carried weapons capable of bringing down buildings. "Here they come," announced Captain Kim from his observation post on the shelter's upper level. "Multiple contacts. All vectors. Looks like they're planning a coordinated assault." Lieutenant Colonel Santos activated the general communications circuit. "All stations, this is 6. Execute Plan Alpha. Marines, show these space vampires what happens when they threaten innocents under our protection." The Battle of Lumthara began when the first Void Hunter forces entered the plaza and encountered an empty killing field. The Marines had spent hours preparing defensive positions, setting explosive charges, and creating overlapping fields of fire. When the harvesters advanced across the open ground, they walked into a carefully prepared ambush. The opening salvo was devastating. Marine sniper teams positioned in surrounding buildings opened fire simultaneously, targeting the larger Reaper units with armor-piercing rounds, while squad automatic weapons engaged the standard harvesters. The sound of human weapons firing in concert echoed through the alien city like thunder. But the Void Hunters adapted quickly. Energy shields snapped into place, return fire began lancing toward Marine positions, and more units poured into the plaza than intelligence had predicted. Within minutes, the engagement had escalated from an ambush to a full-scale battle. "We've got problems," reported Major Thompson from the command bunker. "I'm reading over 2,000 hostiles in the immediate area, with more arriving every minute. They've committed everything to this assault." Santos watched the tactical display with growing concern. The Marines were inflicting casualties at an impressive rate, but they were vastly outnumbered and beginning to run low on ammunition. "All units, implement Plan Bravo. Fall back to secondary positions and prepare for close combat. 200N. Plan Bravo was the last resort, Marines fighting room to room, tunnel to tunnel, using every dirty trick in the book to buy time for the civilians. It was also likely to be a suicide mission, and every Marine in the shelter knew it. That's when the unexpected happened. Velana had been monitoring the human communication networks, using her scientific training to understand their tactical discussions. When she realized the Marines were preparing to sacrifice themselves for people they had known for less than 48 hours, something fundamental shifted in her understanding of these strange aliens from Earth. Ambassador. She addressed Zektar urgently. The humans are preparing to die for us. I know, the old diplomat replied sadly. It is a tragedy that such brave beings came so far only to fall with us. No, you don't understand. They're not falling with us. They're choosing to die so that we might live a few hours longer. This is not their world. We are not their people. And they came here anyway because we asked for help. Zektar looked at her with growing comprehension. Then perhaps, Velana continued, it's time we learned from their example. The announcement went out on all Zephyrian communication frequencies. Every able-bodied survivor would join the defense of the shelter. They had no military training, no weapons, and no experience with violence. But they had something else, intimate knowledge of their own city and technology the Void Hunters had dismissed as primitive. The organic architecture of Lumthara wasn't just buildings, it was a living ecosystem that responded to Zephyrian biological commands. Under Velana's direction, the refugees began activating dormant defensive systems that their ancestors had built into the city but had never needed to use. Walls shifted to create new defensive positions. Tunnel floors became unstable, dropping harvester units into deep pits. Bioluminescent plants suddenly blazed with blinding light, disrupting Void Hunter optical systems. The city itself became a weapon in the hands of its builders. Gunnery Sergeant Chen was leading a fighting withdrawal through the shelter's main corridor when the tunnel wall suddenly parted, revealing Zektar and a group of elderly Zephyrians carrying what appeared to be living weapons, crystalline growths that pulsed with organic energy. Gunny Chen, Zektar said through his translator. We would like to fight beside you. Ambassador, with respect. You're not soldiers. No, the old alien replied, his bioluminescent patches blazing brighter than Chen had ever seen them. But these are our people. This is our home. And you have shown us that some things are worth dying for. We may not be Marines, but we are not helpless. The sight of Zephyrian civilians standing ready to fight alongside human Marines had an electric effect on both species. The refugees who had cowered in darkness for weeks suddenly found courage they didn't know they possessed. The Marines, already inspired by their mission to protect innocents, discovered a new level of determination. All right, Ambassador, Chen grinned, checking his remaining ammunition. Let's show these bastards what happens when they pick on the wrong neighborhood. The final phase of the battle was unlike anything in military history. Humans and aliens fighting side by side, combining advanced tactics with intimate environmental knowledge, facing an enemy that had never encountered such fierce resistance from supposedly peaceful species. The turning point came when Captain Kim's platoon, supported by Velana and her technical team, managed to access the city's central power grid. Instead of simply activating defensive systems, they overloaded the entire network and channeled the energy surge through the plaza where the main Void Hunter force was concentrated. The explosion was visible from orbit. When the smoke cleared, the plaza was a crater filled with the twisted remains of Harvester armor. The surviving Void Hunter forces found themselves cut off from their support units and facing an enemy that had just demonstrated the ability to weaponize an entire city. The retreat that followed was as sudden as it was complete. Within hours, Void Hunter forces were pulling back to their ships, abandoning their harvest operation in the face of unexpectedly effective resistance. Admiral, Lieutenant Colonel Santos reported to the fleet. The surface is secure. Repeat. The surface is secure. Void Hunter ground forces have withdrawn. From orbit, Admiral Walsh watched the enemy fleet beginning to power up their FTL drives. Colonel, they're preparing to leave the system. What's your status? Casualties were heavy but manageable. More importantly, we've got approximately 800 Zephyrian survivors ready for evacuation. The immediate threat has been neutralized. But even as the Marines celebrated their victory, they knew this was only the beginning. The Void Hunters had retreated, but they hadn't been destroyed. Somewhere in the galaxy, they would find other peaceful species to harvest, other innocent worlds to consume. As the evacuation ships began lifting refugees to the fleet, Ambassador Zektar approached Lieutenant Colonel Santos with a proposition that would change the course of galactic history. Colonel Santos, the Zephyrian Republic is formally requesting to join with Earth in an alliance against the Void Hunters. We cannot fight them alone, and we believe you cannot find them all without our help. What exactly are you proposing, Ambassador? We know their hunting patterns, their technology, their weaknesses. You have the military capability to defeat them. Together, we can ensure this never happens to another species. Santos looked around at her Marines, battered and exhausted but victorious, standing alongside aliens who had found courage they didn't know they possessed. She thought about the child's voice they had heard in that first transmission, asking for help from lights in the sky. Admiral Walsh, she said into her communicator. We need to have a conversation with Earth Command. I think we just started something bigger than a rescue mission. The UES Valkyrie and her escorts left the Kepler 442 system 3 days later, carrying Zephyrian refugees to safety and knowledge that would reshape humanity's understanding of the galaxy. The universe was vast, ancient, and filled with predators that had never faced opposition from species willing to fight for strangers. But they had never faced Marines. As the fleet entered hyperspace, heading home to a hero's welcome, the rescued Zephyrians looked back one last time at their devastated homeworld. Most of them would never return. The planet was too damaged to support large-scale habitation. But they carried something more valuable than any physical possession: hope for the future and knowledge that in the darkness between stars, there were lights willing to answer when someone called for help. In the months that followed, the Human Zephyrian Alliance would track down 17 different Void Hunter fleets, liberating dozens of worlds and saving millions of lives. Earth's Marines became legendary throughout the galaxy as the warriors who stood between the innocent and those who would consume them. And on every world they liberated, the story was told of how aliens screamed for aid across the void, and Earth's Marines emerged from the smoke to answer their call. The galaxy would never be the same.